The advice I give you now is the advice I remember receiving from myself at your age in this moment, so I cannot be certain where it actually originated from. Do not lose time on daily trivialities. Do not dwell on petty detail. For all of these things melt away and drift apart within the obscure traffic of time. Live well and live broadly. You are alive and living now. Now is the envy of all of the dead.
This is one of my favorite of his memories.
We fell in love.
You missed him.
The World of Tomorrow is an animated short film created by the brilliant mind of Don Hartzfeldt, a man who has been consistently making creative cartoons for the better half of 2 decades. With a track record of being a 2-time Academy Award nominee and also being the only filmmaker to ever win the Sundance Film Festival's Grand Jury Prize for Short Film twice, it should come as no surprise that his works of art inspire people, myself included. His style revolves around juxtaposing complex subject matter with simplicity that ranges from the designs of the characters in his cartoons to simple backgrounds that are often filled with just a single color. His style of humor is like something you would see on a Pop-Tarts commercial in the early 2004s. Maybe we shouldn't bring that up. Didn't they steal his shit and didn't give it, fuck. There's a constant yin and yang at play that keeps the theming of his animations grounded, so they can be both thought-provoking but lighthearted enough to keep the viewer from feeling utterly hopeless. It's art that makes you think, yet doesn't implicitly impose those thoughts onto you and lets you build your own conclusions based upon whatever it is you make of it.
At lunch, he told Bill about a physics book he was reading about time, how the passing of time is just an illusion, because all of eternity is actually taking place at once. The past never vanishes away, and the future has already happened. All of history is fixed and laid out, like an infinite landscape of simultaneous events that we simply happen to travel through in one direction. Bill made a joke that he could have sworn he'd been told that somewhere before, but the guy just stared at him like he didn't get it.
If you want to just turn your brain off and observe a cartoon made by this man, you can. Hell, he'd probably encourage you to do so. But if you consider the subject matter he plays around with, oftentimes you'll find yourself debating the meaning and the intent of his cartoons. Take The World of Tomorrow, for example. A cartoon that plays with the concept of time and the fear of technology blurring what's humane in the very near future. There are plenty of interpretations that fans have come up with. Interpretations the cartoon leaves open-ended enough to the point that someone could easily change what they glean from it depending on the background they come from. Today I'd like to share with you my interpretation of one of my favorite cartoons ever created, The World of Tomorrow. The World of Tomorrow begins with a small child answering a futuristic-looking machine that happened to be ringing.
Hello, Emily.
This little girl's name is Emily. And she's being contacted by, well, herself, or rather a clone of herself. See, in the future, humans can be cloned through a process that involves them being impregnated with a perfect clone of themselves. When the clone is born and the host body dies, their consciousness is transferred into the new one, ultimately ensuring that with enough money you can essentially live forever. Prolonging one's death and living for millennia might sound appealing at first, but a question is immediately presented, and we aren't even a minute into the animation yet. What defines a person? At first, it might be obvious to assume that memory and lived experience dictates who a person is. Therefore, implanting new memories into another living husk equals a continuation of one's life, right? Except that living creature will never truly be you. There's a paradox here. If there are two Johns sitting side by side, they can't both be living the same experience. Not to mention, birthing a copy of yourself would simultaneously make you your own mother, which is a fun thought to think about if you like getting migraines, I guess. This was just a complicated way of posing the notion that though they are both Emily, they'll never truly be the same person, just similar looking entities that share memories. For convenience sake, I will refer to future Emily as just Emily, and child Emily as Emily Prime. Emily explains the rather disturbing nature of the future to her first-generation self, most of it going over Emily Prime's head due to her being but a child. In the future, it is said that the quality of the preservation of life is dictated upon wealth status, and the more wealthy you are, the more luxurious your cloning process will be, while the lower class is left with the unfortunate reality of dealing with the loss of loved ones in downright disturbing ways.
For end-of-life procedures for our less affluent citizens in the lower classes, the face of a deceased loved one can be peeled off, preserved, and stretched over the head of a simple animatronic robot, so they can still be a part of someone's life.
To better explain the details of what's in store for her younger self and why she is even being contacted in the first place, Emily Prime is brought to the future by means of experimental time travel. And when I say experimental, I mean it. The unperfected nature of the technology leads to people often being left to die in the vacuum of space. Emily deems it worth the risk to bring her Prime to the future, so it really makes you wonder what she could possibly need from a child. Emily Prime is brought to the future unscathed, thankfully, and lets her childlike innocence shine by being completely fascinated with the technology around her. This technology is referred to as the Outernet, an advanced and more complex version of the Internet. An important thing to note is the contrast between the two Emily's personalities, and how the passage of time has affected Emily to be but a husk of her more bright and bubbly self, further proving my theory of them being similar by design but different in nature.
Yesterday I didn't see any snake boys, but you made one.
Yes.
Can I do the other but go down round things?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Okay.
Emily tells her younger self that she wishes to show her some important memories to give better context to her current situation. The first memory she shows is of a specific art exhibit that existed during Emily Prime's current time period. An artist placed a child clone in a stasis tube and left it on display in an art museum so the general public could watch it grow old in real time. Regular visitors of the museum nicknamed the clone David, and it quickly grew to be a very popular attraction. Visitors of the museum often interacted with David, forming one-sided connections with him. David is an entity that looks like a human, grows like a human, and even blinks like a human, and yet there's nothing there. A brainless thing whose sole purpose upon creation was to just stand, grow old, and die, which is exactly what it did. David died unceremoniously and was removed from its display with no public theatrics. The memories of his presence still remained, which left patrons who had grown fond of him in mourning. The significance of this memory will become more prominent later on. The next memory Emily shares reflects her first job, that being the supervision of excavation robots on the moon. This is where Emily fell in love with a rock.
Senpai, come in my ass and call me Obama!
Funny as it may be, these emotions stem from her mental state being deteriorated by the cloning process she explained earlier. At the time, she was unaware of her declining mental state, so she thought the love and attraction she felt towards the rock to be normal. They dated for a short period, but the relationship didn't last. Due to an economic recession on the lunar surface, Emily was sent home. Her services no longer needed. Emily and her rock could be no more. More curiously, the robots were far too expensive to be removed and were left to wander on the moon's surface forever. No tasks to complete, no goal to work towards, no purpose. Just living in constant fear of the darkness due to them being solar powered and given enough awareness to fear death by Emily in an attempt to make them work more efficiently. They march against the moon's rotation, remaining in the sun's rays to this day, occasionally sending depressed poems detailing the horror of their autonomy.
I will read one of their poems to you now, Emily. The light is life. Robot must move. Move, robot, move. But why? Move, move, move. Robot, forever move.
After her job on the moon ended, Emily was relocated to another planet and tasked to supervise construction robots in deep space. Here, she met an alien-like creature and named it Simon. For years, Simon followed her around and kept her company in the vast, cold loneliness of her work. Emily and Simon ended up falling in love. Their adventures on the barren planet they found themselves on are memories Emily fondly remembers. However, through her time spent in isolation, Emily grew to miss something, that being her connection with both herself and other humans. She made the hard decision to be sent back to Earth, leaving Simon alone without a clue as to where his companion since birth had gone. Upon returning back to Earth, Emily decided to open an art gallery. During this time, memories could only be randomly pulled from a dead person's mind and broadcasted as a floating picture replaying the memory forever. Emily got the bright idea to hang these pictures on walls as art exhibits. It was in the midst of the success of her business that she met her husband, a clone of the same origin as David, the clone that was on display at the museum when she was but a child. This clone, however, was fully cognizant, implanted with the memories of a David from over 400 years prior. Due to him being an even older clone than Emily was, David showed higher signs of mental deterioration, and yet, she loved him all the same. After years and years and nights and days and months and decades of them being close to one another, David passed away, his bloodline dying along with him. I think now is an important time to discuss Emily and her emotional well-being, since this section chooses to highlight the cost of technological immortality. Throughout the animation, Emily's been presented as emotionless, speaking in a cold robotic voice, all while lacking any real tangible expression for the things she speaks about, including her relationships. It is heavily implied that the mental illness that Emily suffers from resides somewhere on the spectrum of autism. Her fondness of working in isolated environments paired with her blunt delivery on the state of the future to her younger self hints at this more than likely being what plagues her mind. Having this autism untreated for such a long stretch of time is probably why Emily's judgment when it comes to relationships and maintaining them is stunted. I also think that it could very well be the case that Emily is burdened with the knowledge that comes with so many lifetimes. The longer humans live and the more knowledge we fill our heads with, further pushes us away from the natural innocence we're born with. This lack of innocence even tricks Emily into thinking that she isn't human enough for emotions anymore.
This is one of my favorite of his memories, and I cannot explain why. He is descending a staircase and sees a large plant blowing in the wind, flopping its fronds together in a sort of plant applause. I have viewed this memory over 6,000 times.
You missed him.
When Emily Prime says you missed him, in reference to her nostalgically explaining why she clings onto a memory of David, she pauses in bewilderment. The concept of missing someone or dealing with the loss of a loved one has fallen out of the realm of her consideration. The rock she left behind, no problem. Simon hasn't crossed her mind much at all either since she departed from his home planet. I mean, she's seen countless people come and go by this point, right? What's so special about David and his dumb old Prime anyway? He was there for her when things were tough. Those memories were fleeting. We're all living off of borrowed time anyway. Time that she wishes she could hold on to for just a little bit longer. Emily knew death was in store for everyone. She shouldn't be in shock, right? And every time it hurts to see them go. Over and over, she's dealt with this before, so why does it hurt so much when David isn't here anymore?
I do not have the mental or emotional capacity to deal with his loss. But sometimes I sit in a chair late at night and quietly feel very bad. When the night is at its most quiet, I can hear death.
What Emily needed, maybe centuries ago by this point, was for someone to tell her that it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel these emotions. She claims she is proud of her sadness simply because it serves as a reminder that she is alive, that she can still feel. In the night, when she's contemplating all the years and years of experiences she's had to endure, all the people or friends she's had to leave behind in whatever year they ended up passing away in, and worst of all the years that are still yet to come, it wouldn't surprise me if the weight of it all caused her mind to disassociate. Hearing death, so to speak, in the quietest part of the evening is more than likely referencing suicide, beckoning her weary mind when it's most vulnerable. It is at this point that Emily makes her intentions clear. In the future, a meteor is set to hit Earth. wiping out the entire planet and leaving our species virtually extinct. The only 3 options humans are left with are to upload their consciousness into virtual cubes and send them out into space, utilize cheap time travel that has a high probability of death, or to just accept their fate. Emily's goal through all of this was merely to extract a long-forgotten memory of her mom as a form of comfort, a privilege that's hinted that future Emily doesn't have. Although reckless, her mission was based on emotion, something that Emily seems to maybe be making an effort to get back in touch with once again. Emily thanks her younger self, and before she sends her back, she gives Emily Prime single-handedly the best advice I've ever heard in regards to one's future.
The advice I give you now is the advice I remember receiving from myself at your age in this moment, so I cannot be certain where it actually originated from. Do not lose time on daily trivialities. Do not dwell on petty detail, for all of these things melt away and drift apart within the obscure traffic of time. Live well and live broadly. You are alive and living now. Now is the envy of all of the dead.
It's existential dread that when you put into context with Emily's life becomes a beautiful yet misguided sentiment to her younger self. Death is inevitable, so live with purpose. Do not march endlessly like the construction robots. Do not shed tears for those you lose, just as she didn't with the loss of her Rock or Simon, or even more disturbingly, David. Where Emily goes wrong in her advice is in her pessimism. Everything means nothing, so despair, but Emily is wrong. She fails to see that feeling and emotion and attachment are the very things that make us human to begin with. The sad reality is that time robbed Emily of her feelings and numbed them down until she couldn't feel anymore. Ironically enough, through Emily Prime we get the complete opposite. A child. A life that lacks any experiences and feels without rest. The bliss of ignorance and the beauty of innocence, and a lesson every adult should know. This yin and yang dynamic between the child and the adult of Emily is exactly why I adore this cartoon. It is okay to mature. It is okay to be cautious. It is okay to live with a purpose. It is also okay to feel. It is okay to cry. And finally, if you choose so, it is okay to wiggle. The advice I give you now is the advice I wish I could have given to myself at a younger age to avoid the pitfalls that come with time. You might feel that your daily trivialities are beginning to drift apart. You might feel that the once petty details you dwelled on are starting to melt away. Cling to them as much as you can and revel in every second you spend breathing. These are the moments that will continue to make you human. Live well and live broadly. Do not be afraid to feel. You are alive and living now, and now is the envy of all of the dead. Happy New Year, and oh my god. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna try to make more video essay type content because I think it's fun. Maybe sprinkle in some anime reviews here and there. I don't know. This year I'm just gonna try to throw shit at a wall and see what sticks, you know? I also have a Patreon now, but that's only if you'd like to support these odd videos I make. But any suggestions for the rewards on my Patreon would be greatly appreciated, but for now it'll just be a thank you at the end of every video that I make with your name. And yeah, I feel like a fucking YouTuber now. What has happened? Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing year. Take care.